Greetings, brothers and sisters. So, I got a bunch of stuff to get to, starting off with another disastrous Saturday Night Live cold open and a bunch of 2021 headlines and stories. But I want to start off by talking about the perspective of this video, a deeper perspective than what I usually talk about in terms of all the issues and stories and headlines I'm going to cover here. Is that if you believe in a soul, if you're a person who believes that you have a soul, people have a soul, there's something that very few people think about and talk about. And that is when your soul incarnates into your body, when you become a human being, you pretty much lose all memory of where you were before. And, that's not exactly true because young babies, young children, toddlers even, have some sort of memory. Sometimes they remember their birth and what happened and their pregnancy, right? Their being in utero and where they were before. They have this sense of it, but it's through a toddler's brain, through the ability of a toddler to understand and conceptualize what they're seeing. And as you become a child, and I've talked about this recently, when you're 7 or 8 years old, your brain goes through this process of pruning and regenerating itself, gets rid of all these synapses and things like this. And you lose something like 70% or something like this. I don't know. I could, research it. But I've done videos about that before. It's not specific to this video, so it's not important, the details. But you lose all this memory, right? You don't have, we don't have very many childhood memories. And so we lose any contact with where we were before when we became a human being. And so people live this life. We all have a life where we maybe understand we have a soul, like we're taught we have a soul. Maybe we have some soul experiences. If you become a spiritual person, you get more in touch with your soul and you get a, sense of your soul. But there's this barrier between the life of one's soul, which is eternal, and this life as a human being. Because as a conscious human being, you're born and like I said, you have some memories from your childhood. And then you go through your life and you have memories of your, waking hours, because I'm going to talk about sleep in a little bit. You have memories as a physical person, and that's all we know, right? That's all we really know. There's dreams and things, and I'm, come back to that. But that's all we really understand as reality, our waking hours and our interactions and memories until our death. And so you have this finite period of time where what you consider reality is your physical life. Everything that you understand with your brain and your perception of reality has to do with your physical life and being in a body. And so this is what we consider reality. And especially now, since the science of religion has taken over, that's what's considered real. That's what's considered truth, your physical life. And if you understand what it is to believe in a soul, because many people believe in a soul but don't really think about it and don't really know what that means. But in terms of the original human conception of a soul, which was brought to planet Earth in the modern times 200,000 years ago in the Hindu religion by these higher developed souls, these yogis that realized that there was a soul, that human beings have a soul, and that the soul is eternal. The soul began at the moment of creation, wherever the soul was, and I'll talk more about, my understanding, at least from the heartfulness perspective, of what that means, right, in terms of a soul, the various, where you could be as a soul and, the various layers of creation. But your soul was somewhere when creation started. The essence, your spiritual essence, started with the creation of the universe. And your soul will live to the end of the universe. Your soul is, living is, not defined as living in terms of physical life, but in terms of your essence having consciousness and your essence having some sort of identity separate, separate but connected to God, will live for all eternity, in terms of the universe until it implodes on itself. And so right now the universe is expanding. At some point it contracts and then it starts over. And that has been at least billions of years. The Earth itself is billions of years old. And the earth isn't eternal. The earth isn't as old as your soul. The earth isn't going to last as long as your soul. I mean, anything physical is going to go through various transformations. The sun and the earth and the solar system all aren't eternal. And they're at least billions of years old already. And so the universe is going to go on for some maybe trillions or quadrillions of years, right? 1,000 billion, 1,000 trillion. I mean, who knows how long the universe is going to last and how old the universe is. It's hard for us to even conceive of a billion, right? 1,000 million years. I mean, considering 70, right? 80 years for one life compared to 1,000 billion or 1,000 trillion, even 1,000 million is, it's like inconceivable that this life is so insignificant to the life of your soul and how expansive, and I'm not in terms of just knowledge, but just experience and understanding the ways of God, all the things that your soul has that you have limited access to in terms of your human consciousness. The essence of eternity, right? Something that's, as far as the universe is concerned, is eternal, right? Until the universe collapses on itself. You have this very long-lasting process of physical life and spiritual life and all these things that go on for some, I don't know, trillions upon trillions of years. We don't even know how long the universe is going to last, but your soul is there for all of it. So wouldn't it be really important to have access to your soul and understand your true nature and the true nature of life on planet Earth? But the problem with that is, if you understood or believed this was some sort of simulation, right? The word is Maya in Sanskrit, which means illusion, which means physical life is an illusion. This idea that we're just, like, this is similar to being in a video game, being an avatar in a video game in terms of our soul's consciousness, that it's illusion. Physical life is an illusion in so many different ways, even though we experience it as reality. And the people that run the system now that are using science, the religion of science, it's not even real science, it's kind of bogus science, as a way to dominate and materialize one's existence. That's all that is, right? Your physical life is all that is. There's no idea or belief that there's a soul. They look down at people who believe that there's a soul, make fun of them. I'll get into this more. So the reason for this is, the reason that you lose soul consciousness is that if you looked at your life as being something like an avatar in a video game, where you're playing a video game and you value your life, right? You value your, whatever turn you have, right? Whatever life you're living in a video game, especially if it was your last life, the game would be over. If you lose this life, well, it would have more, value, but it's still a life in a video game. You're still living your physical life, and you're going to die many times playing video games. If you play video games, you're going to end up dying, and whatever that means for that video game, multiple times. Especially in the beginning, your life is going to be considered cheap, right? Because you're just learning. And so you have to make a bunch of mistakes and do a bunch of stupid stuff so that, subsequent lives, you can do better and move along farther because of, past failures or whatever it is. And so the reason for not having soul consciousness is that if you have soul consciousness, and the more that you get when you get older, because if you do, life right, if you live the life the way you're supposed to, you end up gathering soul consciousness, right? You end up gathering various levels of spiritual knowledge, and then your life doesn't mean as much, right? Your physical life becomes, smaller, becomes less important, because when you're thinking about trillions of years of eternal soul existence, and then like an 80-year lifespan on planet Earth as a human being, it's not even like a grain of sand on a massive beach or, desert or something. I mean, it's small. Your life is small in comparison to the existence of your soul. But to really get the most out of this life as a human being, you kind of have to experience it as all there is. Because you have to suffer. You wouldn't suffer as much. Your traumas wouldn't be as bad. Your perspective of the difficulties you have wouldn't be nearly as bad or nearly as important if you had soul consciousness. You would say, oh, this is just an illusion. I don't feel any stress. I don't feel any fear. I don't feel any anger. I don't, it'd just be, you wouldn't have any value of your human experience because you'd be like, oh, it's just a joke, right? It's just an illusion. It's Maya. It's not real. It's something I had a profound experience of when I had my first sittings in the heartfulness system. The first 3 sittings, I had this deep laugh, like all these pursuits, all of these, things that people are doing in the material world, all of our goals and all the things that we're trying to do here on planet Earth is not our real purpose. The real purpose is inside us. And I had this deep spiritual laugh like experience. And it was like God's joke. And, it stayed with me for a little bit. I mean, I can still remember it and experience it to a certain extent. Briefly, like I feel it right now talking about, like I have this, like happy feeling when I'm remembering it. But it's important for me or anybody else not to be able to sustain something like that so that we get the full benefit from life on planet Earth. Because if you knew everything was sort of a joke and an illusion here, then it wouldn't be, it just wouldn't be as upsetting. It wouldn't be as tough. The miseries wouldn't make you feel the way that you feel in terms of, whatever, stress and all the rest of it. So I want to make this video with the idea that this is all Maya, and I'm going to talk about more about this at the end and throughout the video. And to start off with this Saturday Night Live sketch that I'm going to cover. The other piece to this is that from the Heartfulness Meditation, the idea of the creation of the universe is that when the universe was created, you had this, recently Daji gave a talk about this in the Heartfulness Meditation. If somebody knows the talk I'm talking about, they can put a link in a comment and I'll pin it to the top of this video. I'm going to make a video about that. I was going to make a video a couple, maybe a month ago or so, but other things happened and I never got around to it. But he talked about how in the beginning of the universe, there was nothingness, right? There was just this vast emptiness, this darkness that was there. That was, potential. Like the potential was there for the universe. And that part was feminine. That part was the female principle. And then there was this sort of a conscious awakening, this, male part, which was the catalyst for the expression of the universe that was going to come out of the vast universe. And so you had this combination of this, this idea of creation and the emptiness that comes together, the male and the female. And then the universe just came from that, right? The universe was created from that. And there's this essence of love that's behind this creation. But the creation, that moment of creation, there was a sense of fear, right? A sense of the unknown. And so these were some of the things that were created in the moment of creation. And the Big Bang Theory falls short of this. The Big Bang Theory is remedial, again, the religion of science. But the thing I want to talk about here is that's referred to as the Kashob in the Heartfulness system. Babaji called it the Kashob, which is a Sanskrit word, which meant the primary stir, the original sort of creative thought that brought about the universe. And it was a thought, like the thought was there, let it be. This was God's thought, which was the catalyst. That thought was the catalyst for the creation of the universe. And that thought, the essence of that thought, would be the condition of love. And in that thought, that original creative thought that manifested the universe, all these levels of spiritual beings and material worlds was created. And the more dense it was, the more it would be at the periphery of the universe. So there were higher developed spiritual souls that people would refer to as like angels or something, higher developed spiritual beings that were very close to the center, were very close to God. They weren't in physical form. They were on a totally different refined level than, say, human beings, but they possessed a similar soul. Then at the very periphery of the universe, you had gross material matter, gross in terms of physical density. You had the physical worlds, you had rocks and, these types of things, plant life. And then they were at the periphery of the spiritual universe. And somewhere in between those, the dense, gross, materialistic, physical matter and these higher developed spiritual beings that are close to the center or the source are human beings who have a higher developed spiritual essence, but we're not quite at the level, we're still caught in the gross material existence. And there's, various levels of souls, because higher developed souls from the higher regions can come down and incarnate on planet Earth, and their soul is, much closer to God or the divine. They're, farther along their journey, because all of these spiritual essences, even the grossest ones, are working their way to becoming more subtle and finding their way back to the source, the center of their existence, from wherever they exist in the periphery. And so one of the interesting teachings of the Heartfulness Meditation is that that very same thought that came from God, that created the universe, let it be, human beings possess a very similar thought force and creative power. And that's where we manifest our material lives and our internal lives, our internal universes, because we have this potential to create, like the higher developed souls, and that souls that are evolving up from various levels of plant life and animal life and, the transmigration of the soul and eventually become human, they're working on developing that spiritual power and thought force that we possess as human beings. And then when they reach the level of human beings, they have that now ability to express themselves on a high level, right? In terms of, a similar thought force and ability to manifest reality as God possesses. And that's one of the things we're learning to use here on planet Earth. And so souls that are just incarnating for the first time, they're not going to do so well, like in the first lives of a video game. But after you've been here a while and you've been a part of this, simulation, whatever you want to call it, this illusion, this Maya, this video game, you're supposed to get better and better at it. And so when I'm looking at our leadership and I'm looking what they're putting out there, and in this case, this sketch of Saturday Night Live, with the potential, a godlike potential to manifest quality work, right? Quality, creation, creative abilities, and they put out this garbage. This is one of the reasons I mock it and, say the things that I say about it, because it's just so, the bar is set so low right now. It's so low vibrational. It sucks so bad. And so that's the first jumping off point as we go through these various things that I'm going to cover here. So let's start here. Britney Spears' Cold Open, SNL. And it is 3.1 million views, and this is trending on YouTube Trends. And also, 80 Bryant's Ted Cruz makes SNL apology scene with a pina colada. That's hilarious. Yeah, it's a pina colada. And Britney Spears. Of course, Britney Spears is trending because of the recent documentary. So they decided to make a fake Britney Spears. And this is a big part of what I'm going to show you here.
Hey, y'all. It's Britney, bitch.
Wow, that's so bad. That's a horrible Britney impersonation.
You all know me from my upbeat Instagram videos and the word conservatorship.
The reason you know the word conservativeship is because of Britney, right? It's highly unlikely you were researching conservatorships and you found out about Britney Spears. You never heard of her before, but through your conservatorship research, you heard about her. So they're actually saying the opposite of what's true. So it fails. Like, it fails on every level. It's not funny, not true, kind of stupid. And, it's just like it's filler. This is the opening sketch, the cold open, to, the show. It's supposed to bring people in, right? This is supposed to be the funny sketch. It's supposed to make people want to watch the rest of the show. And that's the first joke. And it flops, as does her impression.
Basically, I started this show. Oops, you did it again.
Fake Britney.
Anyhow, this summer has been so much fun for me. I learned so much, I laughed so much, I swam so much, but the most important thing that
Real Britney. Fake Britney.
So people could come on and apologize for things they've done wrong.
Okay, so yesterday I felt like it was the beginning of fall. I pulled out all of my jackets, and then the next day it was...
Real Britney, right? Doesn't look like her. I mean, she didn't get the makeup right. No dark circles here. Doesn't look like her facially. I mean, she has the same hair. Doesn't look like her in any real way. And she probably looks the most like her of any SNL cast member. That's why they used her. Her accent is different. Brittany doesn't really have a Southern accent anymore. So that's different, right? And Brittany's voice has this sort of like, almost like she's about to cry and she's almost like nervous. I mean, she is nervous and uncomfortable and self-consciousness that this Brittany simply doesn't have. It's not a good impression. It's probably like 2 out of 10. There's worse on Saturday Night Live, unfortunately, or, fortunately for me. And I'm going to bring this back to why this is about what I said in the introduction in a moment. But it's, it shows you the level of competence and the ability to produce comic material on SNL. So this is 80 Bryant being Ted Cruz with dreadlocks, a pina colada, a beer belly, and a suitcase.
Hola, everyone.
Again, a laugh track. Back, I don't know, it must have been even before I was born. The people that made television shows realized if they could stick a laugh track behind jokes, sitcoms, people would think they were funny. I mean, that's the level of comprehension the average person has. I mean, I fell for it. Like growing up, I didn't realize how stupid a lot of these shows were. And you just watched them because you got into a zombie-like state. Your brain goes from the active beta waves to the passive alpha waves. That's what happens to your brain when you watch TV. And so they realized they could just make subpar content and stick a laugh track behind it, and people would think it was funny or entertaining because it sounded like people were laughing, right? Even if you knew it was a laugh track, it was still a part of it. And it's just led to this, right? It's led to a place that's supposed to have a live audience using this as a way to convince people stuff that's not funny. And it's offensive in how stupid it is and low vibration it is.
Hey, Brittany.
Hey there, Ted. You look tan.
Oh, no, I'm not tan. I just cried myself red over my fellow Texans.
This is the fake Ted Cruz.
And after a couple of days, after the girls being really cold at being in the teens and the 20s outside, our girls asked.
The real Ted Cruz, an unlikable person, one of the most unlikable people, but this is a bad impression of him.
That's right. And now I'm in a little bit of hot water, which I'm told is a thing no one in Texas has.
I said, look, school's been canceled for the week. Can we take a trip and go somewhere warm?
So in terms of the impression, there's no impression here. This is a zero. Other than saying you're Ted Cruz, there's no likeness here. 80 Bryant doesn't seem like a bad person or a mean person, like, I don't know, just based on what I've seen when I cover SNL. But she can imitate people. She has a very high distinctive voice in terms of, when you have a voice that high, it's difficult for you to do anything else. Certainly imitate a man. She doesn't do any other impressions, I don't think. She's not gifted at it. But sticking a pina colada in her hand and have her do a couple of lame jokes about Texas, what happened in Texas, putting a fake beard doesn't make an impression. They have different shaped faces. I mean, aside from, her being a short woman and him being like a tall man, like he's probably around 6 feet or something, they have different, mannerisms. Their accents are different. There's nothing about her impression that has anything to do with Ted Cruz. And again, what I was saying in the intro, and I want to continue this as we go through it, when you have the level of potential that you have a similar thought force that was present at the time of creation, and you put out such lame content and material. This is supposed to be a comedy show. It's not. They're just shilling for, the Democrats and this sort of agenda that's being rolled out globally and all of it. They're not speaking truth to power. All the things I talk about in previous Saturday Night Live videos, I mean, it's offensive in how bad it is. It's an insult to humanity. Like, it's an insult to God, right? And these impressions are just part of it. Let's move on to the next one. This is Pete Davidson, who we, know who he is now. Other than being, ghoul-like, which Andrew Cuomo, they're both ghouls. All right, I get that. But they're both from New York, and he should know how to do a good New York accent. And, I'm sure he's around a lot of Italian people. My family's from New Jersey, and I grew up in Connecticut. That whole area's loaded. I'm part Sicilian. I have Sicilian relatives still in New Jersey. Used to drive down there from Connecticut. My parents met in New Jersey, and there's just a lot of Italians. And it should be an accent, the Italian New York accent that Pete Davidson, who's a professional actor and comedian, should pull off, but he simply doesn't.
Which is basically what happens at Disney World, okay? The people die, and they move the bodies.
Yeah, but also, Andrew, on the state legislator's request, I said, yes, we were not timely on responding to state legislators.
We're going to come back to this, but that's, again, it's a fail of an impression. Probably, maybe the closest, at least they're the same height. And Pete Davidson's given an attempt to speak like him. Of the three, maybe you give Pete Davidson a 3 out of 10. But again, not funny and a horrible impression.
What did that bird bitch said about me? I will bury him in the tallest grave this city has ever seen.
See, one of the things about Andrew Cuomo is that he's, he's sort of a dial tone.
Yes, we were not timely on responding to state legislators. More importantly, we were not timely enough in providing public information. I get the state legislators. I'm more interested, or just as interested, in getting public information out. And people wanted a lot of information. Now, why was there a delay?
Why was there a delay? I'm going to go with this for a little bit. We'll come back to Saturday Night Live.
Frankly, because everybody was working 7 days a week, 24 hours a day on actually managing the issue. And
again, he wrote a 300-page book, and it's just shooting an email out there. Putting information out there isn't a big deal. And they had the information. They just had to convey it. But they didn't do that, and there's no excuse. But the information isn't really the real problem. The real problem, let's start here. Governor Cuomo nursing home scandal could merit criminal charges. Prosecutor. It totally should merit criminal charges. Trump made Cuomo a COVID hero. A nursing home scandal proves the honeymoon's over. But here's something I neglected to say. My wife had told me about it, and I just forgot to mention it in my original coverage of this. Over 9,000 virus patients sent into New York nursing homes. This is, stunning. Like, no one understands why this happened. More than 9,000 recovering coronavirus patients in New York State were released from hospitals into nursing homes early in the pandemic under a controversial directive that was scrapped amid criticism. It accelerated outbreaks, according to new records obtained by the Associated Press. Well, there's no doubt, of course, it was going to accelerate outbreaks. This is the worst decision that anybody made in the coronavirus, debacle. Trump never made anything close to this bad a decision. To put people who had COVID in with the most at-risk group that was dying, the people that were dying were in this group, older people like who are in nursing homes, and they're always the most at-risk group. Like, it's never a decision you would make. What they say is, well, the New York hospitals were overflowing, so they didn't have places to put them, so they put them in nursing homes, people who were recovering and weren't, so much at risk of dying, and so they put them in nursing homes, which nobody in their right mind would do. It's the last place you would put them in. If you were the governor, or if you were asked for your opinion, and they said, here's the problem. We have these overcrowded hospitals. We have new patients, COVID patients coming in. We have recovering patients that are doing pretty well. They don't need to be in the hospital necessarily. We need to move them someplace. He said, well, what's the highest risk group out there? Like, because we're assuming that these guys are still going to infect other people. because wherever you move these people, they're going to, spread the disease. What's the highest risk group of people? The people that are most likely to die and get really sick from this thing. Oh, it's older people. In fact, like 90%. Oh, well, let's move them to nursing homes. Like, that's what happened. That's what Cuomo did. And it resulted in over 13,000 nursing home deaths. So 13,382 people died in nursing homes in New York State out of 47,875 people. So 27%. 1/4 of the people that died in New York died in nursing homes. And so Cuomo is really responsible for their deaths. That policy is responsible for so many deaths in nursing homes. And it isn't about record keeping or sharing the information. It's about them making the unbelievably stupid or criminal decision. I don't know if it was stupid or it was intentional to put sick people in with the people most at risk of dying from the sickness, and any sickness, because older people are always the most at risk because, they're older people, right? They have the worst immune systems, the weakest bodies, and, the rest of it. But to make it worse, this guy, Chuck Schumer, rips Texas for ignoring climate change. And what he said was, the bottom line is Texas thought it could go alone and built a system that ignored climate change. Right? This is what Schumer had to say about Texas. It's not what's called resilient, and now Texas has paid the price. I hope they learn their lesson. This school right here, look at him. Imagine him saying that to Cuomo's about Cuomo's bad decision. Cuomo's is also from New York. So imagine him saying something like that to Cuomo's. Well, you'd have to imagine it because he actually praised Cuomo.
No excuses. No excuses. We should not have created the void.
That was his first press conference when he talked about the void, remember? The void. And then here's Chuck Schumer.
Had been in, so there was a knot in my stomach. Thanks, everybody.
Senator Schumer, a quick word on nursing homes. The senator's press team knew we planned to ask questions on behalf of New Yorkers who say they need answers. We reached back out to the senator's press team after this exchange and invited them to provide an additional response. Hours later in the Capital Region, Senator Schumer hosted a similar press conference and abruptly left without taking questions.
No? Okay. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to get on my way. Have a nice day. No, thank you.
So this clown's running away from nursing home talk in his state, which was a debacle, which he should have criticized at the beginning. He praised Cuomo's.
Senator Schumer, I want to ask you about the state of New York. Your state, our state, obviously has been the hardest hit in all of the country, particularly nursing homes where 5,500 people have died in long-term care facilities. On March 25th, Governor Cuomo and the New York Health Department issued an order that said you have to take from hospitals back into these nursing homes patients even if they have COVID. Governor Cuomo reversed that decision on Sunday and said, no, you can stay in the hospital. We won't send you back into the nursing home. Was that order a mistake?
Look, I think the governor and the mayor, frankly, have handled things very well. We've been the epicenter of the crisis, and the issues of hospitals and nursing homes was very hard to manage. I think they managed it well, so I think our governor has handled it well. I don't have any dispute with what he has done.
Even the fact that he reversed the order because it obviously has gone so poorly.
But the hospitals have much more room now than they had before.
Kablowy. So I look for this clip, the original clip, but they scrubbed it, MSNBC. The person that edited this, I think they didn't want to get copyrighted, so they did various different, they zoomed in at different places. But it's an accurate, interview. And here he is praising Cuomo's and de Blasio for a disaster. I mean, it was a disaster, a horrible decision. And going back to what I said originally about, doing better, or that we have this this thought force and the ability to manifest and, on a divine level, right, where God has given us this ability, a similar ability as the thought force that created the universe to manifest reality. and this is what they're doing there. Like they put sick people in with the highest risk group, and this guy's praising it after he goes off on Texas, right? I mean, the guy is slamming Texas, and I hope they learn from their lesson. I mean, think about the arrogance here. Like 60 people died nationwide or something. You know, it might be some more coming later, but it isn't 13,000. And again, Texas, I mean, it's global warming, right? It isn't like Texas should have anticipated that the opposite would happen when everyone's been talking about global warming for years, and Texas should have figured out that they were going to have the worst ice storm in record, ever, worst snowstorm. And he's saying, yeah, I hope they learned their lesson, but he's praising Cuomo and de Blasio, this guy. I mean, you just got to do better, right? You have to do better than this. Like, you deserve, whatever you get, because, I mean, lots of people died in this thing. It was a horrible decision. And this guy, because he's, a Democrat and those are his boys, wasn't going to criticize de Blasio or Cuomo's from basically, I mean, it's manslaughter what happened there. Let's go back to Saturday Night Live.
Hi, Gina. Are you here to apologize?
I'm here for the opposite of that. I've done nothing wrong.
This is supposed to be Gina Carano.
No one can even explain what I did wrong. Explain it.
Well, I was drinking 40s with my ex-boyfriend one night, and
So that's what she sounds like in real life. I'd never heard her voice. Didn't know who this was until this controversy. But, think about how bad an impression this is.
No one can even explain what I did wrong. Explain it.
Okay, on Instagram, you said conservatives have it as bad as people living in Nazi Germany.
Okay, congrats. You explained it.
So according to this, they're saying that she got fired from Disney. I know she said a few things that were pro-Trump, but the worst one seems to be comparing the way that conservatives are being treated to the way that Nazis treated people who lived in Nazi Germany. I mean, that's what fake Britney Spears just said. But if you think about it, because she said that, she was fired. Because she voiced being a conservative, she was fired by Disney. And think about all the things that Disney's done over the years. I mean, they had the worst sort of racist cartoons and things like that. They actually talk about that in this sketch. But the way that she's portrayed here as some thug, I guess she was an MMA fighter or something, but the way that this woman is imitating her voice, it's clear that she either never heard her or like this is just meant to be a really bad imitation and not funny either.
Okay, congrats. You explained it. Look, I never would have made that Nazi comparison if I'd known everybody was going to be such a Nazi about it.
he wanted to kind of change his life. And so he woke up the next day and went to a gym and started training.
So again, another horrible impression. These are all, like a 2 out of 10, a 1 out of 10. I mean, these are, and they're not funny. The jokes aren't funny. And another big fail, the basic premise and the whole premise of the sketch is a fail because it's called Oops, You Did It Again, based in Britney Spears' sucky song, Oops, I Did It Again. So that would imply that Gina Carano had in the past had said things that the mainstream media found offensive and she had been fired. It means that Andrew Cuomo had put sick people in nursing homes or something similar to that and people died before. This was the second time he did it. Oops, you did it again. And that Ted Cruz had gone on vacation before while his state was suffering. Do you understand this? The stories don't work with oops, I did it again or oops, you did it again. And so that kind of flagrant, I mean, that's the whole premise of the bit, right? The whole premise of the bit is based in Britney Spears' song, and it doesn't work. And that's just the low quality, the low consciousness, and what people are willing to accept. People are willing to accept subpar content because they don't know any better. So there's a few more things to get to here. Here, this first one, Fauci says we still may be wearing coronavirus masks in 2022. So this is, and then I guess it's possibly moving up to 2023. And then this, already vaccinated, here's why you shouldn't stop wearing your face mask yet. 5 reasons to continue wearing a mask even after you're vaccinated. Here's why vaccinated people still need to wear a face mask. This is from the New York Times. The new COVID-19 vaccines from Pfizer and Moderna seem to be remarkably good at preventing serious illness, but it's unclear how well they curb the spread of the coronavirus. See, that's a very weird sentence, because all as we really should care about is controlling serious illness. If it's not serious, then what's the problem? If it controls serious illness, right, wouldn't that make sense that, that's all we really care about is people dying and getting seriously ill? I mean, we don't care about the common cold. People don't like to get sick, sure. But as long as people aren't dying or having the serious sort of, the really bad cases, like I had a moderate case and it sucked, right? Like, I don't want that again. But the mild versions I hear most people get, over half the people show little to no symptoms. And so if that's the case, who cares, right? It's the deadly cases and the really sick people that, we're trying to prevent. That leaves only the possibility that some vaccinated people got infected without developing symptoms and could then silently transmit the virus, especially if they come into close contact with others or stop wearing masks. And so there's the words here, possibility. That leaves the possibility, could. So this is the language they often use where they're not sure of anything. And that's happened since the very beginning of COVID. But I know one thing that would be a bad idea. If you took a lot of sick people that have had severe cases of COVID that were in the hospital, and when they're not fully better, you go stick them in a nursing home with the biggest at-risk group of people, that would be a really bad idea. And you don't have to say it might be a bad idea or it could or it would possibly be a bad idea. No, that would be, a bad idea. And really it's something that should be criminal, especially when you end up with over 13,000 people dying in one city. See, if you go down the list of the amount of deaths, here's 11,000, 16,000, 11,000, 12,000, 6,000. In Wisconsin, there's half the number of deaths as were in nursing homes in New York State, right? I mean, think about all the states that had less than 13,000 deaths in their whole state. And Cuomo, I mean, here's some with, Wyoming, 662. I mean, a lot of these states had very few deaths at all. And so just that one bonehead move by Cuomo and the people in New York that was applauded by Chuck Schumer, or didn't, condemn it, and he praised Cuomo and the mayor of New York, and, they had more deaths in some of these big states, right? Massachusetts, which has Boston, Massachusetts got hit pretty hard with a lot of early deaths, and they made some questionable choices, and they didn't have 13,000 deaths. And so, again, this guy was celebrated as a hero. I want to come back to this because I want to get to my original point here.
Layla, beautiful name. First of all, kids don't get the vaccine, get COVID very often. It's unusual for that to happen. They don't. The evidence so far is children aren't the people most likely to get COVID. Number one. Number two, we haven't even done tests yet on children as to whether or not the certain vaccines would work or not work or what is needed. So you're the safest group of people in the whole world, number one. Number two, you're not likely to be able to be exposed to something and spread it to mommy or daddy. And it's not likely mommy and daddy are able to spread it to you either. So I wouldn't worry about it, baby, I promise you. But I know it's kind of worrisome. Are you and daddy are able to spread it to you either?
See, the thing is, and I said this before when I covered this video before, why are they wearing masks then? I mean, we know this. The kids don't get it, and they're not big spreaders of the disease. They can go back to school. You just have to deal with the teachers, which, the teachers are pretty much socially distanced from the kids, and they're probably not going to get it from the kids because the kids don't get it, and when they do, they don't really spread it. Like, by now, they should know some of these things. And they've been wrong time and time again. Just the way they handled it in the beginning. They said it was surface-to-surface contact, and then it was airborne, then it was surface-to-surface contact again, and then it was aerosols, which came out of nowhere, and they said masks don't work, but then they do work, right? And there was all these various things, that they came out with, and they never gave the other side of the story. Like, for example, so many people would die if you didn't close down businesses. Like, this is one way to look at it. All right, how many people are going to die if you don't close down businesses, if you don't do a lockdown? Well, then how many people are going to die if you do close down businesses of starvation and financial hardship and, the economy collapsing and all the things that might happen afterwards, food shortages. And so there's going to be consequences, economic consequences on one hand that will lead to deaths, and there's going to be COVID consequences on the other hand. And which demographics are going to die? Because you always want to protect the kids. You always want to protect the kids in terms of, are there psychological damages for kids wearing masks? The kids are often wearing dirty and wet masks because they're kids. Are they going to get bacterial infections? And are they going to have poor health? Is it going to cause, something like, I don't know, asthma and things in kids and lead to, and then just the depressive aspect of it, the psychological problems because of COVID. They never weighed the other side. They just came out and said, we have to do this. And oftentimes they were wrong. And then when they admit they're wrong, like JoJo here, saying, kids don't get it, they don't reverse themselves and say, all right, kids, stop wearing masks. Kids don't have to wear masks anymore. They're not at risk of giving it. They're not at risk of getting it. Plus, more often than not, the kids are going to wear their mask wrong. They're going to touch it, in the wrong place right over their mouths. It's going to be dirty. It's going to have bacteria in it. It's going to be wet, and, they're going to throw it on the floor and put it back on. Kids aren't going to be cleanly about it. And so, they never reverse themselves. And this is the religion of science. I'm going to come back to this because this is what I was talking about in the introduction. The religion of science that's so arrogant and it pushes back against, the belief in God and the belief in a soul and a belief in some other, plan in the system. The belief that God has a plan, there's a plan, everything's random, and that we have to do something and intervene. And also something to consider, 250,000 people a year die of doctor-related deaths. This is from CNBC. The third leading cause of death in the U.S. most doctors don't want you to know about is doctor-related deaths, malpractice, and these sorts of things. A recent Johns Hopkins study claims more than 250,000 people in the U.S. die each year from medical errors. Other reports claim the number to be as high as 440,000. 250,000 is half the reported COVID deaths that we have for the past year or so, since COVID hit the U.S., and 440,000 is almost the 500,000 deaths that are, again, just reached as a new milestone. And so those are just deaths from people going to doctors. The third master of the heartfulness system once said that doctors are licensed killers the same way as lawyers are licensed liars, right? A condemnation of our system and, the quality of human life right now. One more thing to think about, though, I wanted to bring this in based in what I was, the introduction to this video, this idea that everything's a simulation. And so if you think about it that way, the masks themselves are like not real, right? Like it's all just drama and illusion and Maya and these things. And when you're able to think about it that way, it just gets easier. It just, all right, whatever, right? Because it sucks and there's really nothing you can do about it. But if you look at it like, all right, this is just some sort of drama I'm going through to help my soul move along its path and its spiritual evolution, then you're able to, balance your reaction and get through things in a much easier fashion. So going back to the original premise of this video, if you have a soul, which I believe you do, right? I believe we all do, and our soul is eternal, and this is just a short blip, infinitesimally short blip in your eternal soul's existence, then WTF? Like, think about what's going on with the world. Now, what I was making reference to earlier was that we have this, because of the nature of our soul and the ability for us to manifest reality with our thought force, with our, consciousness, the quality of human expression right now is so low vibrational, so low consciousness. I mean, it is de-evolving in an embarrassing way. We see this on a daily basis. Every time I look at the world events and the way people are expressing themselves and treating other people on the internet, it's just an embarrassment. We're a failed experiment. That's been said in the Whispers of the Brighter World messages. Maybe not so much failed experiment, but an experiment that's gone kind of wrong and that we are not getting it. And there's been so many multiple attempts, so many spiritual movements, so many divine interventions to right the ship of humanity that, things are getting kind of desperate, right? When you talk about the devil or demons, what you're talking about is people or some sort of soul bearing a higher developed consciousness, what we possess in terms of our potential as human beings, going off script and using that potential, using our thought force and our freedom of choice to just say F you to God and create our own thing. Just do our own thing on planet Earth without, any sense of our true purpose or the divine laws or the divine system, and just be like doing whatever we want to do, right? And that's what's happening on planet Earth. I mean, that's, in a nutshell, the problem of planet Earth. And people, the average sheeple, the average citizen, expect so little from their government, so little from their leadership. Like I was saying, you look at the best of the best, the people that are celebrated, politicians, famous people, celebrities, people with money and power, and they pretty much all suck across the board. Lots of them are stupid, remedial in one way or another, big egos, just not like anything special about them. I'm not saying all of them, but most of them, if you met them and you were around them and you're going in expecting, wow, this is a person at the top of their field or, somebody that's an expression of successful human beings. And they kind of suck worse than more normal people I know, right? I'd rather hang out with people I know or people in my family or something than be around one of these freaking demons, right? I mean, if you really looked at the people and you were able to see what they're about, you wouldn't want any part of them. They're not successful human beings, and they're the ones that are being celebrated. They're the ones making the decisions. They're the ones with the most influence. I mean, you have a lot of people who get lots of various, levels of content, and they have a platform. They're trying to deplatform people who have, more insight and see a broader vision and don't agree with the official story. And they're promoting people that just are yes men for the beast. Anybody who has a microphone or a platform now, if they don't knuckle under to the party line, the agenda, then they're deplatformed, they're demonized, they're criticized in so many ways and destroyed more or less. And you see this happening more and more. And if this is a video game, which is, kind of is, it's a simulation to some extent, it's not reality. It's a physical reality. You can touch and see and smell. You can have, senses and physical experiences. You can communicate with other people. You can see people, right? They can see you, all of these physical sensory objects and things that are there. That's real. Like the planet Earth is real, and our experiences are real from a three-dimensional perspective. But if you look beyond what we're seeing, we're just all these microscopic organisms, cells, and smaller things coming together and forming a body, all these different organs, all these different working parts. And the body itself, when the soul leaves, it has, it's nothing, right? Your eyes don't work. The body's dead. It's broken down. It has no life in it, right? There's nothing generating anything. And so the soul is the real thing. The body is just, animated. Your soul created your body, and it animates it. It brings it to life, right? And we know that. And so when the soul leaves, it's nothing. So that's not reality. Your body isn't reality. It's a temporary, it's something like you put on a coat, right? You put on clothes and then you take them off and you shed your sleeve and you go on to something else. So your soul is what's important, not your mind and not your, any other part of your physical being. It's the spiritual essence that's eternal, that its span of existence is the beginning of the creation to the dissolution of the universe, the end of the creation. And so religions have pretty much all sucked. They don't suck as much in the beginning, but they get progressively worse. There's the law of diminishing returns. There's some spiritual energy, and right after the master, the creator of the religion 2,000 years ago, it would be Christ, and 1,500 years ago out of Muhammad. I don't know when these 5,000 years ago, Krishna and these things. Buddha, I guess, was 3,000 years, something like that. And so you have these, right after the religion is created, which happens shortly after the death of the master of the system, the person that, inspired the religion. It's pretty good, right? It's got some energy. The teachings are still pretty pure and things are going pretty well. But then it just gets worse and worse. People of power and, who aren't spiritual in nature come over and hijack the religion. I've covered this in previous videos. And so they just continuously suck worse and worse, and they have more and more power and influence over people, and they start to degrade and, pervert the teachings, and they come in and they impose stupid laws and rules and restrictions that aren't based in the actual teachings, that aren't based in spiritual principles and God's laws and God's intentions. But the worst thing that religions do is they create this false idea that they're a middleman between you and God, and they're the ones that are responsible for what happens to you after you die. And that isn't true. You are. Your life and the way you live your life, the way that you, play this video game, the way that you embrace your soul's path and connect to God on a deeper and deeper level is responsible for where you go after this and what happens next. Your religion can do nothing for you. They have no power. They have no authority, but they tell you they do. And that has created huge problems. And they, have basically lied to people, the religions, for so many years, and they have taken humanity in the wrong direction and act as a barrier between you and creating your own personal relationship with God inside yourself, right? The heartfulness meditation that I do, which is being given at this time for people to remedy that situation. It is a system designed specifically to do this one thing, help people connect to God internally, inside their hearts, and develop their heart, which is an instrument for experiencing love, connecting to God, and all things spiritual. It is, a way to use this instrument, this feeling, loving instrument, to guide your way, help light your way through your spiritual path and your life, your journey here on planet Earth, using your mind and your gut and other things, but your heart needs to be sort of the central part of your spiritual and material existence. Your beacon, right? Your lighthouse to guide you on your way successfully the way God wants you to live and develop into what God wants you to become. So I grew up in the age of religions. Religions had a strong hold on everything. Politics and Hollywood and music, and a lot of it was BS and a lot of censorship. And they were in charge of, who got to say what things, and they censored you and shut people down, and they canceled people, which sucked then. Like, it didn't not suck then. But what sucks even worse now is we have the religion of science that is canceling people. They've taken over. They've taken the mantle. We saw that happen during COVID when they closed churches down. And they said, yeah, God can't help you, and they were basically telling people God can't help you. You have to rely on science. Science now is more of an authority than religions, and that happened. Like it just happened recently in 2020. I mean, it had been going on for a while, but now they're just like saying, hey, we'll let you, believe for now in your stupid religion or whatever it is, and your stupid God, and, because you're remedial Trump supporters or whatever we want to categorize you as. But, don't try to compete with science, because if it comes between science and your God, we're going to choose science. So this was predicted by the third master of the heartfulness system. He did a video conference. He was, not having good health, so he couldn't travel to America anymore. And every year there was sort of a national gathering for each country in terms of people who did the heartfulness system. And in 2011, so this is 11 years ago, he did this video conference with people in Atlanta, Georgia. I was there at the time. And he said something that really, it basically predicted what I just talked about. He's talking about American leadership here. What is God? Which God? Where is God? Things which we have heard, questions which we have heard asked by the great Asuric, which is demonic, emperors of the past in India, like Ravana and Kumbhakarna, like Kamsa. Where is God? Ask him to show himself before me. Questions asked thousands of years ago, centuries ago in India, are now being asked in modern times in the West, which is so highly educated, so highly affected by science and technological development that they think there is no need for God. Now, he said that, again, in 2011, 10 years ago, and 10 years later, we saw it really manifest. So, he was, right about so many things like this. Just things that he said that would come to pass. And now we see it. They came out and actually said science is more powerful than God and religion. Of course, religion is religion, right? But God is something else. Religion is a man-made construct that, usurps the authority of God. God is either something you believe in or you don't. And if you believe in God, you believe that there's a plan. You believe that you have a plan, your soul has a plan. And ultimately, you're going to get to the point where you realize that this is just an illusion, because your soul, which is eternal, which is the initial part of this, the introduction to this video, your soul is using this existence for its own purpose to move closer to God and to understand the godly universe. But none of these things are for your personal egotistical enjoyment, for, your own bad choices and wrong choices and addictions and things that dominate the world. But now that there is this pseudoscience, the religion of pseudoscience, because science in its purest form, Master Charji loved science. He was somebody who was very interested in science and scientific thought, because true science is, it's an art form, and if you adhere to scientific principles, then you're going to find scientific truth. But we don't have scientific truth because big money, and big power influence science. You can buy scientists or pressure scientists, which we see going on right now, to doctor research or to lie about their research or to say something is scientific when it's just the opposite, or to, speak in ways like I was quoting before, probably and maybe and likely and, things like this, and call that science when they haven't proven something definitively, but they demand that you change your lifestyle and your habits and things like this because science said so, right? You shut up and put on your mask and trust the science.
It's science, and you shut up and wear your mask. It's science, and you shut up and wear your mask. It's science, and you shut up and wear your mask.
There's been a lot of dopiness in the conservative movement, the Republican Party, the moral majority, and like I said, religion's hijacked your spiritual purpose, and there's a divine reason why all these things are coming to an end. The religions are going to disappear for lots of reasons, including, this idea of science and this religion of science that's taken over, but that's going to be short-lived as well. But at least with religions, there was the acknowledgement of God, acknowledgement of a soul, and those things are now disappearing. Where if you say those things in the future, you're going to be considered remedial and stupid, and they're going to be teaching your kids. You might be in a religion yourself, but your kids won't. Your kids will look down on their parents, and they'll look down on these stupid ideas about God and the soul and a purpose and things like this. And they're just going to want to stick their consciousness up on the internet in some way or another, spend as much time doing those sorts of things. They're not going to care about going outside and having a good family and the things that have helped our species survive for so many thousands of years, right? Thousands upon thousands of years. Again, not necessarily thriving, not evolving, but at least functioning to one degree or another. But now we're moving backwards, and it's going to a much lower vibrational situation, and this is going to bring about the end of our civilization because, we can't get much worse. It can't get much worse on pretty much every level. Human beings are being degraded in such a way, and what we're exporting in terms of the energy that we're putting out there and the creation that we're manifesting collectively, it's a nightmare, right? It's, demonic on every level. Our demonic monetary system and our polluting and, demonic energy system and food system that's unhealthy and unnatural and unorganic, where we're eating poisons, processed foods, and GMO crap and all that stuff. Pretty much everything. Demonic Hollywood system of entertainment. Our school system's demonic, right? Governments, all these things. Pretty much everything that makes up humanity is going in the wrong direction and has disconnected itself from the divine, is operating on an egotistical, F you, God, I'm going in whatever direction, the wrong direction that I want to go. And there's one sign after another, and still humanity doesn't do anything. Like our leadership, but individuals as well. And so this is why the system has to end. You can just see it. It's just there for anybody who wants to see. And so it behooves each of us to come up with some sort of solution, personal solution. Again, like I keep on saying, the heartfulness system is given for this particular problem, the solution of deepening one's internalized relationship with God and developing their heart as an instrument in which they can have a more divine existence. And so that's why only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.